Welcome to Sound Values, powered in part by LSA Burger and Classic
Ladies and
Affinity.
gentlemen, thank you for tuning in live tonight on DentonRadio.com. You are tuned into Sound Values. We are broadcasting out of the beautiful Discover Denton Welcome Center on it's only 90 degrees right now on the square. And I'll tell you what, compared to 112, 115 the last few days, it feels like winter time out there. Ladies and gentlemen, I have got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. C. Rowe Music right here in the
How's it
studio.
going?
Yeah, man. And I'm just happy to have you in here, man. You know, it's been a while. I keep up with you on Instagram and stuff like that. You're doing all kinds of fly stuff. You know, I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. And yeah, like I kind of told you the story right at the beginning of how like I ran into that guy. I met that guy Chris in the car, and then he talked, and I was like, man, I want to get that guy on the show. He's always doing fun stuff, and I'm always interested in what people who are making beats and putting stuff together and working with different artists and really, I mean, putting out videos and content and really cool stuff, man.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have you out, and you know, you put me on that little showcase a while back, you know, and that was super,
right over here at Andy's.
At Andy's, yeah, man.
Yep.
That was super fun. I think that was like 2 years ago, and I was just really starting to pick up steam as far as playing shows. So I appreciate that, man. So, you know, let's kind of jump right into it, man. You know, the first question that I always like to ask people just to kind of get the ball rolling with things is, and the question is kind of like, what is your first musical memory where you can remember like music, like making this impact? You're like, that's what I want. I want to do something like that. Like, I don't know what exactly, but music's going to be a part of whatever I do.
Yeah, my first musical, I guess, experience, you could say, I remember we were on vacation with my family. I think it was Aruba. I was only 6 years old, maybe. And we were in the lobby, and it was one of the nights we were there, and they had karaoke.
Oh, okay.
And I saw people, just anyone could go up there, hold up a mic, and sing their favorite song. And if I remember correctly, I sang like, I don't know, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, something that where just the words,
moment.
Exactly, the words were ready to go. I had no fear. And I just remember standing in front and being able to sing that. And that's really what I enjoyed, was the stage presence, being in front, having a microphone, and being able to do something. And I think that was like the first time my parents knew I could like, oh, he can carry a tune, you know. It's not terrible for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, for a 6-year-old. That's what's up, man. So, like, growing up in the household, what kind of like music were your parents listening to? What were kind of the influences that you grew up around?
So, musical influences, I used to listen to 90s radio a lot with my dad. I remember driving in the truck. He had, who was it? Peter Gabriel. We listened to that. I remember we
Nice.
that, you know, Shock the Monkeys, Sledgehammer. He listened to Bush, Glycerine. Those are stuff I can remember.
Yeah, for
back.
sure.
Other than that, it was a lot of self-discovery stuff, influences throughout life.
Very cool. Did you grow up with any siblings at all, like brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have an older sister and a younger sister.
Do they participate in music at all?
Not so much.
Not so much?
Younger one, I think she sang a little bit in choir. She's more in theater now.
Cool. So did you kind of start off like doing vocals or like singing, and then kind of transition more into kind of like when did things kind of start to work in kind of like more of this hip hop and you working with artists and in the hip hop kind of genre? When did you start to move towards that?
That happened right here in Denton.
Okay. What year was that? You remember?
2011.
Okay, so a while back.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So what was that like? Like, what was the process of like, oh, hey, now I'm working with these artists and creating content with these artists and now putting music out as well?
Yeah, I was over in Gateway Apartments. A couple of years before, I was up in Colorado State, and I had Reason, and it was the first thing after GarageBand I ever had, and I was putting together hip hop beats. And I was always shy about being a rapper or anything, and I knew I could sing over it, but it was hip-hop, and not many people were singing over hip-hop beats at the time. I came to Denton. I was at the Gateway Apartments, I think apartment 228, and we were having just like I had the equipment, I was just like playing back some beats. We were having a party one night, and I stepped outside my door, and on the first floor, I heard someone rapping along to it, just freestyling, going off of it. And it was off of one of my songs that I had that I was playing back. I just leaned over the railing, and I was like, hey, come on up here. Like, I want to show you something. And that was my friend Pierre, who's down in Houston right now.
Did you know him at all at the time yet?
Didn't know him at all.
Oh, okay.
He's just my next door neighbor. And I was like, I hear that. I like what I'm hearing. Come on up. And we just started cycling through my beat catalog that I've accumulated over the last few years. And he just started going on them, and I set up a microphone. I had, the studio in a box, ready to go. Knew nothing about gain staging, mixing, anything, and I just hit that record button. Knew nothing about compression. We just put together I think like an 8-track, 10-track album.
That's what's up, man. So I mean, you say your catalog. How many, how many beats do you think are in your catalog? Like, how much do you think you've put together in 7-8 years of producing beats?
Man, I don't know. I'd say hundreds.
Yeah, that's where mine's at.
There's so many. I put them. I mean, there's different categories. If I pull out a hard drive, there's probably close to 1,000. The ones I use probably under 300. The one that actually could turn into a complete song, 100, 200.
Yeah.
But I mean,
exactly.
there's just ideas, just terabytes of ideas, just sitting somewhere.
Man, I know. Like, I recently decided in Ableton, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start at my very low. Like whenever I made that was like, it was like a W. It was titled like Win something. So I started there, and I just started going up. And there was so many unfinished ideas where it's just like 16 bars and a few little pieces here and there. And I spent like hours just being like, oh, I remember working on it. Why didn't I ever come back to this? Like, this was tight. What happened? It's like you make so much in your creativity, your brain's going all the time that you forget about some of the beats where you're like, oh, I gotta go back to that one all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what's up, man. Yeah, thousands just sitting there. So you guys make like an 8-10 track EP when this first starts, and so like then where does it go from there? And how does it go from just working with a random next door neighbor to all of a sudden putting out some quality content?
A lot of practice, doing it wrong a bunch of times.
Yeah, I mean, you were like, I didn't know anything about gain staging, compression, so how did did you go to school for that at UNT at all, or any kind of sound design? Or I
didn't. I got a degree in hospitality management. When I left, I went into the industry, kind of put music on the side. And I was just told too many times that, you're too good at music to like just put this as like a side project. So I ended up going to Media Tech.
Okay.
Down in Farmers Branch.
Nice.
And I was like, you know what? I'm following this. I at least need to know what I'm doing. And so I went there, and I was part of the first class that they offered an associate's degree. It was no longer a diploma program.
Okay.
And so I did the audio engineering there, and I got the superlative of Mr. Media Tech from my class and valedictorian.
Nice, man.
So I knew
cool.
if I was going back to do this, I'm putting in the work to do it.
Absolutely, man. That's what's up.
Yeah.
So, for those out there who, like, I have no idea what, stage gaining is, gain staging, whatever you want, what is it?
So gain staging is just, everyone wants to go out and put all these plugins on everything, and through the mixing process, it's starting at the source, making sure your level coming in isn't too hot, so you're not clipping, so the audio's not getting distorted. It's not too low, so that you have absolutely no dynamics to it, and you're just getting the bare minimum. And then when you send that off to your first thing, whether it be an EQ, whether it be a compressor, just making sure you're in a good threshold, so that when it's being sent to the next one, you're not coming in at, way over what the plugin's supposed to handle, that it's sitting in a good spot. And you want to make sure that's it stays consistent throughout your entire effects chain.
Cool. And so what do you mean by when you say, like, when you put it into the next one? Is that like the next plugin or just the next stage of the mastering process?
Next plugin, depending on whether your submix. So if I have, like, the drums and I send them to one bus, I want to make sure I'm not redlining. We can get more detailed into what digital peaking is and what actual analog peaking is. But, just making sure you have constant levels coming through. None of them are too low, and none of them are just absolutely, destroying the next plugin that's in line that you decide to use.
For sure. I had a track recently that I started when the mix began. I really liked it, and then as I went on, all of a sudden it just felt more muddled. So I'm gonna restart. I was like, I don't know what I did in here. Like, I don't know if I need to move this here, do this a little bit, but all of a sudden it just got super muddled in there, and so I was like, all right, we're gonna start this back over.
Yeah.
So, man, I think first off, valedictorian. That's pretty sweet, man. I'm sitting, I didn't know. I'm sitting here with a Renaissance man, dude, a philanthropist, the valedictorian. This is something else. All right. Yeah. So, what are some of your favorite projects that you've gotten to partake in, through this process?
First one, definitely Pierre's My Pain. That's as, started from the bottom as you can get.
Yeah.
That's my MacBook. That was, I think, one track is out of GarageBand. It was just, we hit record, and it was essentially a mixtape, but it had a theme to it, and the songs, I remember staying up all night making sure that the song order, flowed together and it sounded like a project.
So I find a lot of producers, they kind of have a different style when they're making a beat. What do you like to start with?
I'm a melody guy.
A melody
Absolutely.
guy. Okay, cool. And
every time.
Do you start just by playing it on a piano, or do you find just maybe a sound, a sense, something that sparks the idea?
Starts in my head, I sing it.
Okay.
I'm a vocalist. I've always been. So I'll hear something, then I have to figure it out on the piano or whatever synth I choose.
All right, that's cool, man. And so I find it interesting. You're like, people weren't really singing over hip hop beats at the time, and like in my head, a lot of the time, like I was always like a boom bap kind of hip hop guy. Like I liked that 90 BPM, and now, but I'm like, I accept like hip hop and what it is and how it moves and changes. And now I'm like, man, there's people are singing all over hip hop beats now. Like first guy that popped in my head, I was like, Post Malone. Mostly what he does is kind of sing and do melodies over stuff. It's not even. I don't really. I consider him a rapper because he does rap, but he's also a good musician. If you've actually ever watched him play the guitar and sing,
we went to the same high school.
Yeah,
he's just like
you went to Grapevine.
Yeah,
dude.
He's just 5 years younger than me.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up 1st through 12th grade in Southlake, Texas.
Okay.
So like, I have a bunch of friends. I live right next to Grapevine, and so I had a bunch of. And I remember a homie of mine, Chris Hergenrader, like posted a picture. He's like just hanging out with Austin. Like they were just kicking it when he came in town. So yeah, I always find that I'm like, man, it's so crazy. Grapevine, Texas. You never know. You never know what's gonna come out.
It's home to a lot of people. Demi Lovato also is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so hopefully she gets better as well, because people are struggling with that right now.
Right.
With those problems. So you did the project with Pierre, and then what's some of your other favorite projects that you've been able to put together?
I joined a band. It was White Bison. Ethan Dorsett was in it. Jesse Haynes.
Why does that name Ethan Dorsett? I think I'm Facebook friends with that guy.
Probably are. Yeah, I knew him when he was working at Panhandle.
Okay.
With Eric.
Okay. All right.
And we just kind of.
What kind of music was it?
That's a good one. A lot of people said it was like. I heard reference to Fleet Foxes, a little bit more upbeat, a little funk in it.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you say you're a vocalist. Did you sing in that band at all? Or
I was a backup vocalist.
Okay.
And I played whatever instrument no one else was playing,
That's
given what song it was.
Nice. So how did you, sorry, cut you. How did you kind of learn to play all these different instruments?
I had to learn piano because my first 2 years of college was spent in Colorado State as a vocal performance major.
Very
cool.
So
I got my music, and if I didn't know how to at least sing it by sight reading, I need to at least know where the notes are and play the piano. Plus, we had skills tests, so they just got us through triads and basic chords.
So the whole karaoke in Aruba really did set you off.
It really
man.
did.
That's pretty cool. That and see, I've asked, like 125 people that question at this point with how many people I've interviewed, and so like. Yours was one of the most like I got you like, and it was it resonates through all. Some people are like, oh, just this or this, but like yours was like this happened, and I realized like this was cool. So did you were you in any kind of choirs or anything growing up? Like how did you kind of maintain the practice that's necessary to be a vocalist?
I joined choir in 8th grade. Choir in my high school when I switched over to the high school in Ledyard High School It was interesting. It was one of the popular things to do. In a lot of schools, you don't necessarily come across that, but all the football players wanted to be in choir. We had a choir director. His name was Russell Hammond, and he just knew how to bring out the spirit in everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone rallied behind every single song we did.
The coolest homie was that's what's up, man.
So
this was in Grapevine.
This was Ledyard. This was the first 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Midway through high school, I switched to Grapevine.
Okay.
My last 2 years, junior year and senior year, and I was under the direction of Pat Antonone, and he is probably one of the most inspirational figures I can think of when it comes to music in my life.
Nice. Very cool, man.
He showed me, the music theory aspect of it, really encouraged sight reading, and really encouraged me to, further my experience in music and possibly a career in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so, you mentioned having a career. When did you start to feel like this was becoming a career?
when I couldn't keep up with the work and realized I could make money off of it. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's it.
No, that's great, man.
I first started out coming out of college thinking I was going to either work for my parents at their wedding venues. I was a food and beverage manager. But on the weekends, I always had, hey, what are you doing? You still doing music? Can you record this for me? And I was like, yeah, I got some free time. And then they'd hear that project, and someone else would be like, can you record mine too? Can you record mine too? Can you? And then I was like, I have a full week schedule on how I'm going to figure out all these albums.
Yeah.
And so I had the idea, all right, yeah, $20 for this song, and then next thing I knew, I could afford, running my studio and getting new equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I need to turn this into some sort of business, label myself, get my marketing straight, and see if this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now you're saying that's what I was going to ask you is there's the artistic side of it to the music, and then there's the business side, which can be very hard to balance those two.
Very.
So how do you do that? How do you balance the artistic side and the business side? What's kind of your advice, your secret to that?
That's a good one. I think you need to measure what your demand is, figure out the projects that you can take, know when to say, maybe this one's just not right for me, maybe I can pair you up with someone else, and just you have to make time for yourself and just know your worth, honestly. If you say $40 and they're like, my friend can do 35, then go 35 with your friend.
Yeah.
40 here.
Yeah.
That's not going to change what I do.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that's funny. I've said that a few times in certain interviews. It's just like you got to understand the worth, understand what your product is. And one question that people will ask me is, well, how do you know what price to put on, And that was something where I was very fortunate to when I started playing shows, the venue that I first kind of started getting my first few shows at, they just booked me at a certain rate. And I was like, that's actually a really reasonable rate. And so that's just what I made was my rate. So I got lucky that someone else created that for me, my worth in a way. I guess I did it, but they put a price tag on it in a way. That became consistent, So how do you do that? I mean, especially as a producer and someone who's working with people in a studio as well, how do you price yourself?
Well, I'll start with this. This is kind of the business side of it. If they say yes to your first offer, you went too low.
Okay.
That's just kind of in general.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, ideally. But after that, you also want to discuss that artist budget. You want to, if you have someone who comes through who may not have the biggest budget, but you're extremely inspired by their music, and you're like, I could turn this into something, and I'm going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe make an exception in that one because it's going to be worth your time. Maybe start a contract, say, hey, 20% royalty, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Whatever your contract with them is. That's just honest. And never price yourself low enough to the point where you're not happy doing what you're doing, where you feel obligated to complete something and it's just not worth your time anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can agree with that. And so when you started getting, you started making a little bit of money on this, and you were starting to improve your studio. You said at first just a MacBook and a mic, know, and a few other things. What were some of the things that you would say? What are the little things that can make a difference make a big difference in a studio setting?
Definitely the room you record in. You don't necessarily need a vocal booth, and I'm finding that out after I spent $800 in foam. You really don't.
That foam is so expensive, man.
I always tell people, if you told me when I was 6 years old that one day you're going to go out and spend $800 on foam, I would look at them like they're crazy.
Yeah.
And I may have spent more than that. That's just for the booth.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I know how expensive that stuff is, man.
Yeah.
It's just triangle-shaped foam, and they charge you $100 a pop for it.
And that was me going ahead and doing something and committing to something before I knew the background to it.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. Do your research before you go buy a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Become an expert or ask an expert, and then you'll have fewer regrets.
Exactly. You never know. One day, maybe you might even already do this kind of like basically just advise people on how to open or put a studio together. You're the guy who comes and goes,
Absolutely.
yeah, do this, this, and this, and this. It's going to be the most efficient, best way, best use of your time, best use of your space.
Yeah.
So you said the room you're recording in. Now, something that I have found that seems to happen to me is my music always sounds the best in my room. Now, I don't know if that's just me and maybe just my like where I'm at, you know, like with my monitors right here. I'm in my space, you know, I'm in my zone. But I feel like when I go to a friend's house and I'm like, yo, check this out. And I feel like it just sounds different all of a sudden. Is there any truth to that, or is that just like a okay.
Absolutely, room shape. Depending if you play a mix back in a rectangular room and then play it back in a perfectly square room, you're gonna hear different frequencies.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool, man. So how does I mean, can you explain to me like how that really kind of affects the sound and the frequencies? Is it just kind of the way it fills the room?
It has to do with a lot of the stuff that's in the room too. If it's a carpeted room, there's that. If you're on a second floor and you're not on a slab of concrete, the bass won't shine through as much.
Oh, okay.
Because it reflects the wavelength on, sub frequencies are a lot longer, and that's why when you're outside a club, you can hear the low notes and you don't hear the high notes. So a lot of them will travel through and they don't reflect as much. So
And you said they're longer?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So,
Man. Yeah, it's like one
it's
of my
a bunch of different things.
Dude, I love talking the dynamics of sound.
Yeah.
That's why I had to ask. I was like, okay, so wait a minute, because I've brought that up to my buddy so many times, who's been one of my best friends for years, and I've shown him so much music. And I'm like, I feel like it always sounds different in your room for some reason. It's his room where I'm listening is way bigger than the little bedroom that I'm chilling in, you know, when I'm listening. So I can totally see how, like, especially bass frequencies come through differently. But that second floor, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So
room resonant frequencies, if there's a tone that just the room rings out at. I don't know if you've ever been in a room where you start talking and it just feels like your voice is filling the room and you're like, what is going on? It's because your speaking voice is actually the same resonant frequency as the room you're standing in.
Oh man!
Have you ever walked into like a
crazy.
space and then it's just like I hear myself way too well right now?
That's interesting. I never even would have thought about that. The room is at the same resonance as your speaking voice.
That's why mixing studios they spend so much money in the control room for all those diffusers in the back. There's a reason for everything. Bass traps up in the corners because they want that room to be as neutral as possible so that when you play it back, it is consistent over pretty much everything.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So. Have you ever, sometimes I'm always scrolling through Instagram and I follow the studios and there's just like these dream studio pictures, man. Have you ever been in one of those that are just, it looks like it's $1 billion with, the lights and it's perfectly clean and like white all on the walls? Like,
I haven't. I missed my opportunity this spring. I was out in Los Angeles at the ASCAP Expo. And if I stayed a day longer, I would have gotten to go to the Village Studios. What is the name? I'm blanking on the owner's name right now, but part of John Mayer's Continuum was recorded there.
Nice, big time.
And my friends all got to go because we just happened to be in the right room at the right time. We got into, it was a Grammy organized event. How our names got on the list, mine wasn't on the list. My friend's name was on the list, and he begged for a +1, and we got in. And so I was sitting at a table, a luncheon, with Greg Wells next to me, a mixing legend.
Okay.
Daryl Brown, a songwriter for Leanne Rimes, has done stuff with Stevie Wonder. Next to them was Cassidy Pope and her manager. She's an upcoming country artist. And the owner of Village Studios.
So that's kind of
whose name I can repeat any other day. But
all
for
these
some
people
reason,
who are behind the scenes killing it, man. That's really
and
cool.
then us.
Yeah. Hey, y'all are getting there. Yeah, they were like looking at you like, who are these guys? Like,
Well, see, this was the advantage we had, is we were at a table of people who have so many credits in music that it's not even a topic of discussion anymore because you don't have to ask. So that conversation never came up. No one at the table had to ask each other, what did they do? So I was safe.
Yeah,
it's not like we're upcoming artists like, so what were you involved in? No, if you're at that, if we were at a table where there was no need to ask, they were just probably all thinking it.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So, recently, like I said, I started seeing, that you were working on some music and you were putting out some videos, and then there's this fly red car in the video.
Oh,
so
yes.
Just tell me about the video making process and what that was like, and of course the ride that also Chris was like, he was nice enough to let me use that in the video. So talk to me about that.
Video making process, if it's directed by me, it's as organic and basic as you're going to get, because I don't know video. We're shooting a music video tomorrow night, and I'm hiring a professional to do it.
Very
just
nice.
because I don't know what I'm doing on that. It's not my area of expertise. So if you see
you gotta go be a valedictorian at a film school now, man.
I do. I have to go back and get my credentials. So if there's a video that comes out, it's either recorded on my phone or I got a Canon, G7X. I don't even know the model of the camera.
Amazing.
I was advised by a professional in that area to, you're a vlogger, do this. It's like, cool. So I did that. The car we built in Connecticut. My dad's dream was always to restore a car, and we were thinking, what's a cool car to restore that's not overdone?
Mm-hmm.
And he saw Starsky and Hutch one day, and he's like, yeah, that's the one I want to do. And you can't find those cars. We have a 75 Torino. I think the TV show was a 76. But we have the 75, complete ground-up restoration. Took about 4 or 5 years. We worked through the winters in Connecticut, which is the equivalent of the summers in Texas down here. So we're sitting in the garage at, -5s.
Yeah, exactly, man.
I can show you scars on my knuckles of, taking the bolts off.
Oh, man, I know what it's like to work in the cold like that, man, with that stuff.
Exactly.
It doesn't work very well. Man, that took you 4 or 5 years. Wow.
It was a weekend project. We weren't actively during the week,
Yeah.
You're out of school, let's go do that. I grew up playing football, playing basketball, lacrosse, wrestling. I tried everything. And, had music. So it was just something we could go do on the weekends or in our free time. A lot of it is thanks to my uncle. And my uncle and dad did most of the work. My uncle has a lift in his garage.
That helps.
Absolutely, that helps. Yeah. So it was really a project that my family did. The engine, I think it was from one of my uncle's buddies. They remembered back in the day he was putting together a kit car, and he had a 429 Interceptor, police Interceptor. And he was planning on putting it in, like I said, a kit car. And we just called him up, like, what is it, 30 years later, however many years later. We're like, you didn't drop that in any car. Do you still have it? He's like, still sitting in the basement. Valve covers on it. Carburetor still in the box.
It's been sitting there for 30 years. That's amazing.
That's the first car that engine's been ran in.
Wow. That's cool, man. That's cool, man. I remember for years my dad would just bring, he was never restoring anything like a Torino, but he would bring cars home, fix them up, flip them. And I always wanted, when I was a kid, I even had a big book. I wanted a 1965 cherry red Mustang, hardtop with the white interior. Maybe one day I'll have that, but that was there was a guy down the street who had one, and I was a kid, and I asked my dad, can we go knock on his door and ask him if he'll show me that car? And of course the guy was hyped. That was his baby. He's he would park it out front and then take it in, and he would never drive it. He would just park it so you could see it driving by. And
never be afraid to ask a car owner.
No,
about their car.
That's what I realized, man. I was
that is their center stage right there.
Yeah, exactly, man. So, man, you got a lot of different talents here. You first off, you restore a car. You valedictorian of your class. You're a singer. You're a musician. You're a businessman. How do you just mentally balance everything as far as just the organization process of keeping it all straight?
I'm still figuring that out. Trust me on that one. I actually just accepted a new job as the technical director over at White's Chapel United Methodist Church.
In Southlake?
Yep.
Yeah, John McKellar. It's a good man over there.
I was just talking with him today.
Did you meet Shauna LaCroix? Have you met her yet? That's my aunt.
What?
That's my aunt. Shauna LaCroix is the choir director. I think she's either the choir director or
her office, here's my office, her office right here.
Yeah, that's my aunt. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my aunt. Yeah,
wow. I need to tell her.
Yeah. I met your nephew Mikey, and if you say Mikey, she'll lose it. She'll be like, "What?"
Wow.
I don't see her too often, but yeah, my cousins Jackie, Lauren, all the So. Yeah, that's my aunt. So, see, dude, I told you it was a strangely small world between me and you, man.
It is a small world.
Here I get in a car to go home, and I meet a guy who magically you produce a track for,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, now you're working right next to my aunt. So
yeah, what that leads me to my next point is, building off of balance is I try not to say no to a lot of things. Even though it might not be my main strength in what I'm doing, a lot of times I'll go along because I know I'll get the experience. Like working with, when I got to work with Rico Reckless on produce a track for him, what would have made him choose me? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that helped me out was someone out in Farmers Branch at Nine Zone Studios. Their engineer was out of town, and they had the opportunity to record him. He was in town, and they called the first person they knew. I technically had plans that night. I didn't know who Rico Reckless was at the time, but I was like, yeah, I'll go run the session. Went out and did that. Saw him for maybe an hour, 2 hours. I left. I talked with his manager. His manager took down my number. I got a call a year later, and he said, "Hey, you're still in Texas, right?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Let's do a song together." Next thing I know, I produced a track with my friend Ben, Proof Productions, and I was singing on it, and it got put on his 15-track album.
Nice, man.
Yeah, Big Reckless, and Double XL has written about it twice already.
Man, that's cool. So
one feature, only one, 15 tracks.
What's that
and
track
I'm the
called?
only. It's Rain.
Okay,
featuring
cool,
Zero.
man. So how did you did he already know you could sing, or were you just like, hey, I think I could do something over this, and he gave you that shot?
Yeah, I said I'd record him. He came across the beat. He had an idea for that. He's like, da, da, da. I was like, yeah, it would be cool. He's like, da, 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 da. He's like, do it. I was like, what? I was like, no, I'm here to record. He's like, no, go do it.
Yeah. That's
like,
what's
all
up,
right.
man. Yeah, next thing you know, you're featured on this
I sang
guy's...
on it. Next thing I know, I see it. It was at like the #1 advertised slot on my mixtapes for like 2 weeks.
Nice, dude.
Double
That's got to put a
XL was
smile
writing
on your
about
face.
it, saying they didn't quote me in it, or they didn't like put my name, but it said the album boasts one feature, and I was like, I know who that one feature is, and that's another thing under my belt.
That's me. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. That had to be cool. He's just like, hey. So, yeah, that had to be wild, too, because you randomly go work with this guy. A year later calls you up, and then randomly you get like, not randomly. You know, people, I always love the saying, luck is preparation meets opportunity. Yeah. You know, because you did the work, you did the homework, you worked hard, you got the credentials, and then, and now you're popping.
Which actually led me right off of that one, led me into mixing a song for it. I don't know if it got released because, I left that job right when I finished mixing it, but I got to mix a Waka Flocka track.
Nice,
yeah.
Man.
No one looks at me and thinks he mixed a Waka Flocka track, and there's probably no situation where anyone from Waka Flocka's crew would come pick me out of a bunch, but it was just being there because I said, yeah, sure, I'll go do it.
Yeah, you.
And then that snowballed to the next thing.
Like you said, accepting whatever comes your way most likely will lead, you will find something within that experience to help benefit you if you look at it the correct way. Like, even 2 years ago when I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go play this set, and it's only going to be 15 minutes. And I was like, then I'm going to fly down to Dallas. And the very next day was my first day as a student teacher. So I was like up late playing the shows, and then woke up at 6 in the morning, then went and I was a student teacher in my final semester. But like, it could have been one of those things where I could have been like, oh man, I don't want to play 15 minutes, but I was like, yo, 15 minutes is the opportunity to bang out my bangers, like to just throw in my best stuff, not worry about 45 minutes or an hour, just throw in 15 minutes. And then I met a couple other cool cats.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here, 2 years later, talking with you about the whole experience again, man. So I've always believed in take any opportunity you get, especially musically.
Yeah.
To get involved with music, so many people would be so happy to be in that position to even have the offer, to be able to do anything that's involved with the creative process of music. Now, I am curious, whenever you receive a track from Waka Flocka that needs to be mixed, what are you getting? Are you getting multiple stems, or are you getting one file? Like, how do you receive it?
I got invited to the studio. I had to mix it at their studio, which makes sense because you don't want to send stems like that just around anywhere.
Okay.
You're not going to take a high-profile artist and be like, here you go, it's going to your studio.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to let that happen.
Yeah,
Like, you come to ours, it doesn't leave the hard drive, do your thing on it, and then we'll get back to you. And so I did that. I got the final mix down of it. And even though I haven't followed up with whether it's been released on an EP or a mixtape or whatever it is, actually the next time Rico Reckless came by to do a second song with me, which he actually featured on my album, which is, I can't thank him enough. He started singing along with it, and I was like, so you've heard it? And he's like, yeah, it's been in circulation, and I need to pinpoint where it's at.
Yeah,
but he knew the lyrics
find out
to
what
it.
That is. Yeah, man. So, like you said, your album, you yourself have put out your own music, and so once again, like you seem to do a very good job of balancing these things. And so, what's it like? Do you master your own stuff, or do you send it to somebody else?
I master my stuff.
Okay. mix, master, write.
I mix
everything.
it because I'm too specific.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I sing, I know how I want my voice to sound, and I'll never get it how I want to sound. But if I figure if I can do it and I can save the money, I can get it to where I'm not too bothered by it.
Yeah.
And I'll go mastering. There's a group of people who are extremely good at it, and you have to pay the money for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a larger group that is just controlling dynamic range.
Yeah. Now, for those who have no clue what mastering is, like explain to them like they're a 5-year-old, what is mastering,
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but essentially it's taking the stereo file and enhancing it in areas where basically you're trying to get the most loudness out of it or just get the right dynamic range and making sure it just kind of it fits. I'm not well versed enough in what mastering and what wizardry that they do that you can send something off and it comes back and it's so much better. But from what I understand, it's controlling the dynamic range, making sure it's ready for radio play, so that when your song comes next, it's not like you have a song at this level and then it's like your song's quiet or like way too loud or way too overcompressed or it just sounds, it's. I guess it's like putting the wrapping paper on the gift, pretty much. Like it's not necessarily that, but it's a presentation of it. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but
no, it makes sense. No, it perfectly makes sense too, because like that's usually how it works. You do this, this, and this, and all the little kinks and clanks, and then you put that final on there and give it that extra boost, and it's that wrapping paper. Right. Now, how do you feel about stuff like Lander, where it's just like an algorithm that like takes your track and apparently masters it?
I love it.
Yeah?
I really do.
There's so
much. I use it.
Okay.
Well, for my stuff, I don't necessarily. I think I did it. Actually, yeah, I think I did. You know what? This is what I did is I started mastering my own, and then I'd compare it to them, and I do it with clients, and some clients that like knew I was doing it, and they were, happy with it, and they like that one. So if I can sit back and not click a button rather than do this and more people like it, you gotta give
if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Gotta give credit where credit's due.
It's
like I get 10 minutes to an hour back on my life depending on it's I need to think about the next project.
Exactly, and that precisely, and especially in the when you're mixing and mastering and doing all that, that time is money. Because the quicker you can,
I can have that going
track.
and be halfway through my next song.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's cool, man. I used it a couple times, and like I was like, doesn't make it sound worse. It actually does clean it up a little bit, So
what it provides? It provides consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you do the full album, one's not here, one's not there. You don't have to go back. You don't have to keep leveling them out. It's like, is it there? Is it not? No, they got metering for that, and they're going to get it done.
That was one of the hardest things for me to learn was that, like, when I'm playing a set, like now, there are some tracks where I've learned, I'm like, all right, you're here. And then the next track, once I finally learned more about compression and multiband dynamics and EQing and all that, now my waveforms are much bigger and you can see the dynamics and the dips and all that kind of stuff. Because when I would put stuff like on Reddit and ask people to kind of tell me what, they liked, and there was a while I was always getting...
What subreddit, if you don't mind me?
I used to go to Future Beats a lot because they had a weekly submission where you could submit and they had a daily submission too. It's not as... People aren't as active.
I'm interested in that.
3 or 4 years ago, and then like I go to Reddit hip hop and lo-fi hip hop, and I go to all those places and just see what people are talking about. But the people used to be a lot more active on there. Like there were kids who I know who started off just putting their stuff on that Future Beats Reddit, and now they're big and they play out in LA and stuff, and that was like where they started.
That's awesome.
And so
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'd submit stuff like that, and people were like, "Hey, your dynamics," and I would kind of talk to people like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Well, you notice your wave file is just a big bar all the way across." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Okay, so how do I fix that?" And they're like, "Well, you need to start sidechaining certain stuff and start doing this," and I was like, "Oh, okay, tight." And so then I started talking to more people and watching a few videos here and there, and I was like, and then I can remember the first time my buddy Jared looked, he sat and he was listening to his track and he was like, all right, yeah, it's pretty tight. And I was like, yeah, I did it. I did it. He likes it. I got you finally,
That's
man.
always good. Always good.
Yeah, man.
Good
Have you ever had that moment, like, you're sitting in the studio and you play a track for somebody and, you it's like somebody who you really wanted to work with, you play them that beat and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool, man.
It happens once in a while. It's hard, but you'll come across it.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the future projects you've got coming up? What's some stuff that we can expect from you?
It's actually a good time to ask me. You know The Infamous, right?
Yeah, Spencer Wharton, yeah.
Mixing their album.
Yeah, he has been on the show twice, actually.
Yeah.
He's been here. Yeah, he's good people, man. He's good people. So he booked me for a few
their
shows.
album's about to be released. I want to say it's 12 tracks.
Nice.
So I recorded that down at Mediatek Studio B, mixed it all with Rowley's help, and got that one.
Wild man.
Yeah, man, he is. I'll tell you what. My thing for The Infamous is they are one of the best bands to work with. Talk about being on time. Talking about being super polite with if I miss a deadline, they're like, oh, just work on it. We're just looking. Professionalism to the max. And that's out of everyone I've ever worked with. It gets a lot of grace from me, and I respect them so much. I just released with Ira Smith. He goes by Smith. GFRD2. It's Gulfport Forgive, Roughtport Don't 2. It's a rap album.
Okay.
It's a sequel to when we released the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a project with Egypt Green. She has an EP coming out. I work with an artist out in California. She has Elise Howard. She has an EP coming out. I go on Thursdays every once in a while out to Garland to a home studio. I'm working on a blues kind of rock with Dylan Shelley music. And then I'm just starting to mix Sagacious Sue's album. I know I'm forgetting people,
man,
and I know we're
I was almost getting lost in that. I was like feeling like I'm going in a tunnel. Like,
that's current project right now. Chris Jones music. I did a few singles with him.
Mm-hmm.
Trey McFeezy, he's out of Denton. I did his last album. We'll record and mix it. I mean,
that's what's up, man. So where can we find your music?
My music's on Spotify.
Okay. What was that record called?
It's called Love Notes.
Okay.
So you'll have to search C-ROW and then type in Love Notes. I'm buried.
All right. I'll find it. I'll find it. I got Spotify. I'll find it. That's what's up, man. Very cool. Well, like you staying super busy, man. And like I said, I was, I'd be scrolling. I'd be like, man, this homie's getting crazy up there. He's having a great time. He's doing all this kind of stuff. And like I said, and the one thing that I was loving too is like when I met you, you were such a nice, chill, casual cat. And then in some of the videos when you were working with, tell me the guy's name who you've said it multiple times, and I'm just having a blank on it. The rapper who you're like, I can't have that music be playing at the church.
Oh yeah, Rico Records.
Yeah, I would be seeing you like in pictures with these cats, like looking so hard, and I was like, what are you up to? What is El Ciro getting wild on right now, dude? So no, I loved it. I was like, this is what's up, dude. This is the kind of stuff that I like to see.
Yeah.
It's always great to see good people doing good things. So it's just cool to see that whole process. And like I said, I'm sure one day, and sky just seems like it's the limit. Seems like people are hollering at you. People want to work with you, and to go from hollering at a dude down from the balcony, to what you're doing now is awesome, man. Is awesome. So to kind of like round things off here, let's say one day you're standing on a stage, all right, and you're doing a TED Talks where you're talking about how you created this musical empire, this whatever. You see yourself in that spot. What would kind of be your number one piece of advice for people who were like, how do I do what you did?
Network is one, and when people think of something, be that person that they think of based on your reliability, your work dedication, and the quality of product you produce.
Awesome,
just be that person. If they need a guitarist or they need a vocalist, whatever you pride yourself in, make sure you're that reference.
That's what's up, dude. Yeah, well, I will remember those wise words, my friend. I hope one day I do see you on TED Talks. With the whole skinny mic right here. Just let me tell you.
I'll take a show for 10,000 people. Let's start there. TED Talk, maybe.
Yeah. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's been great talking to you. I've learned a lot. I learned things that I didn't even know, and I've been staring at EQs and stuff for a long time, so I'll
Hey,
take this
send me
knowledge.
some mixes.
I'll take
send me
this
some
knowledge back.
templates. I'll let you know what I know.
Okay, no, that'd be
There's no
perfect, man.
secrets.
That'd be perfect. So y'all make sure to look up his album on Spotify, C-ROW. The album is called Love Notes. Man, once again, thank you so much for coming in the studio.
Absolutely.
Y'all tune in next week. We got a whole bunch of new shows coming up. August is right around the corner. I've got DJ Lightbright out of OKC coming into the studio next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've also got this week at Breakfast and Beats, we've got Memory and Jay Koenig from the Always Proper crew down in Austin. So y'all stop by and come check out some of that lo-fi beats and chill. I want to give a shout out to LSA Burger Company for sponsoring the show. Big ups to y'all. Try them parm fries. We will catch y'all next time. Peace.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out DentonRadio.com for new Denton artists and where they're playing next. While you're surfing the internet, make sure you check out our friends Classic of Denton at ClassicofDenton.com.